The aliens misunderstood one thing about mankind by Mr. Shark's 202. The ship sat above their outpost like a monolith sent from God himself. Its resolute silence was suffocating when compared to its abject, dizzying size, a jagged, black shard of metal. It would have inspired awe if it wasn't so terrifyingly mysterious. Amen noticed his hands shaking as he stood atop the outpost's easternmost tower. No one had said anything yet, not even an acknowledgement of the oddity. Just radio silence from all superiors. His blaster weighed heavily on his neck. It hung from black felt straps and blended in almost perfectly with the sleek metal of the gun. More than ever, it felt like nothing more than an anchor. A noise startled him, and he turned his gaze downwards to see another soldier climbing the small ladder and coming up into the open tower. I knew I wouldn't be the only one to think of this spot. It was the immediately recognizable voice of Leda. She had such a harsh rasp to her tone that she couldn't even speak to the outpost's various stray cats. They'd always dart off. She claimed it was a medical condition, but Amen knew a smoker's rattle when he heard one. Leda crested the top of the ladder and sat on its square precipice instead of rising to stand, her feet dangling some 20 feet below to the barren grey ground. The moon was a forlorn place. It had taken a lot of gear to establish an atmosphere for their small outpost, and even then, most people were left wanting for air during PT. Looking out from the various towers that surrounded their base, one might have been able to find beauty in the monotone, soft dust that so subtly carved out a clean horizon. Yet now it looked like nothing more than a stage for the imposing dreadnought in the sky. Amen sighed. What's everyone else saying? Nothing. Leda shrugged. Absolute silence. It's not us, it's not human. He rubbed his shoulder to stop his hands from shaking. It's one of theirs. Yeah, no shit. Leda took off her helmet and set it beside her. All outpost guards were required to keep their heads shaved, and sometimes it made it hard to tell who was who, but Leda's features avoided that problem. Her sharp, thin face stuck out from her wide shoulders, making her a rather unique build. Quite opposite from Amen, whose own mom had once called him generic. He never forgot that. Command said nothing? Did I stutter? Sorry. Amen tore his eyes away from the ship, choosing instead to try and focus on her. It's just that this isn't right, you know. It's just got me messed up is all. Yeah. He could see that she wanted to instinctively quip at him, but instead stopped herself. She looked past him and toward the ship, not hiding the worry it gave her. You're not wrong. You know? He chuckled, shrugging off his gun and choosing to sit down beside her. It's funny. I always thought this gun was useless. I mean, look at this place. Not a single soul in this whole system except us. But now I know it's useless. Just not for the reason I'd originally thought. She smiled and nodded. You know our training says that if we have no ground targets, then we're supposed to shoot at ships. Right. Our training also says that we can request to move assignments, and that command will do everything in their power to comply. Talk about shooting at fucking ships. Have you ever seen one of them? Amen didn't think she even heard his joke. She was serious, almost grave. It made him feel sick. Only pictures, he admitted. They're supposed to be 10 feet tall. I heard that scientists think they can take a blaster bolt straight to the chest as well. No armor needed. Amen winced. He looked back up at the ship and tried to convince himself with his own words. I suppose it's a good thing we all agreed on an alliance so quickly. Leda wasn't having it. She laughed, but in a stern and cold manner. Bullshit. You and I both know something is fishy. Something was fishy from the goddamn start. She shook her head, tensing her lips as she brought her knees up to her chest. Mankind finally meets intelligent life, and lucky us, they're nice guys. How cool. Then, without any reasoning other than resource prospecting, the military starts setting up outposts on random moons that are whole fucking systems from the nearest colonized planet. Yeah, no fucking chance, and I don't know about you, but I ain't seen a goddamn single prospector. Amen didn't say anything. He knew it too. Everyone on this backwater station did. Nothing about their scenario made any real sense, but what were they supposed to say? Up until now, their position seemed rather inconsequential. In fact, it seemed damn near forgettable. Now this fucker shows up? Leda continued, sneering as she peered over her knees. No, I'm not an idiot. I know a fucked up scenario when I see one, and God knows we're in for it. Amen took a deep breath. I guess we'll Alarms shook the outpost. Every corner of the quiet little enclave turned over and came alive. Soldiers sprinted across the open ground, and orders were shouted through the sudden chaos. Amen sat in a frozen silence as his mind processed the deafening beeps. 3 short rings. His face went cold. That's... Leda was less inclined to sit around. Bombardment. She yanked on his collar as she quickly shot down the ladder. He followed by instinct alone, but even that soon petered out. He robotically descended the metal ladder, and when his boots hit the dusty ground, they lost all urgency. All he could do was walk, panning his view as he saw soldiers sprint by, screaming and panicked. The metal buildings and towers shifted as the automated systems prepared to resist damage. Lights flashed from God knows where. It was like watching a movie. He wasn't present. He wasn't there. He couldn't be. The usually placid dust kicked up into a small storm of choking smog. Amen covered his mouth with his elbow as he walked, stumbling over his feet occasionally. His eyes worked their way upward toward the ship that haunted them. It was as if a metal arm was reaching out from oblivion, like the void was offering its final deal. And with each one of its dreadful fingers, it was lighting the way with pulsing balls of red spark. In a sense, it was mesmerizing. Heavens mobile, little maroon lights fixated at the tips of silver spears. There were worse final sights. His neck whipped as he was violently twisted around. Leda had him by the shoulders, and her twisted, angry face rallied an instinctual fear and obedience in his chest. She screamed over the cacophony of disorder. Get the fuck! They were both thrown to the ground in a horrendous crash. Amen's ears rang, his brain filled with a simple, mute tone. He tried to quickly get from his stomach to his knees, but following explosions compromised each attempt and shoved him back into the dirt with the same ruthless brutality that a schoolyard bully would have. The world was now pure, grey dust, punctuated only by the horrifically bright flash of explosive impacts. Sound was gone. Any sensation that wasn't immediate terror disappeared into less than a memory. All he could do was crawl, wincing as each impact showered him in hot rocks and strips of metal. Time melted away. Experience became a singular pool, steeped in such ancient instincts of survival that Amen would have been honest if he said the moment passed in an instant. He found himself in front of a descending metal tunnel, not yet caved in. He recognized it as the entrance to the mess hall and wasted no time in rising to his feet and sprinting down its length. Inside and under at least partial protection via multiple feet of ground, he found a few dozen soldiers, all wounded and crouched low in corners. He recognized a few faces: Leda, a few other patrolmen, and Commander Deves, the officer in charge of the whole post. Deves was noticeably less shaken than the rest of them. He was a relic from the Federation Wars, one of the few men alive who'd seen combat in all its horrors, and it showed. He stood tall where everyone else crouched, and with every impact that shook the ground, his body simply swayed along with it, a warrior's sea legs. Whelp! Deves's voice effortlessly carried itself across the mess hall and into their ears, resonating with its weight. He rubbed his crew-cut grey hair, and a smirk decorated his square, slightly scarred face. Let me be the first to apologize. Amen didn't need to look over to know that it was Leda who shot to her feet. What the fuck? She was covered in blood, whether it was hers or someone else's. Amen had no idea. Everyone was absolutely caked in grey dust, so much so that in some cases, skin tone couldn't even be discerned. Leda steadied herself on a nearby table as explosions continued to rattle above ground. For all the bombardment's terror, it seemed rather ineffective at penetrating deep. What the fuck is happening, Deves? Leda had obviously lost all care for military decorum. How fucked are we right now? If the blatant insubordination bothered Deves, it didn't show. At the moment, it seemed not even God could shake the man. To your first, retaliation. To your second, I'd say moderately, leaning toward highly. Amen was exhausted and emptied, but even he found his words as he lay on his back, strewn across the ground. Commander, we're going to need answers. It was as if every nerve ending had been blasted off Amen's body. He was wrought with a dry, suffocating tingle that he thought would literally kill him. I'm sure you will. The burly officer put his hands on his hips. But you're not going to get them. At least not all of them. Too risky. Leda sneered and shook her head in one violent swoop. Oh, really? She marched closer to the commander and got directly in front of his chest. I don't know if you've noticed, you brass hat, but that sound, that shake we're feeling, that's fucking death. That's death at our goddamn door. And you're still going to keep your secrets? Let me tell you, the Reaper doesn't care about secrets. A serious shade came over Deve's brows, and his face hardened as he looked down at Leda. With a stern, quieter voice, yet without missing a beat of discipline or rhythm, he replied, Do not lecture me on the Reaper, Private Palms. I've had the distinct pleasure of getting to know the bastard quite well in my life. I might even say we're friends. He returned his gaze to the rest of the room, though his voice maintained its more austere tone. I'm going to tell all of you exactly what you need to know. Nothing more. Am I understood? No one answered, and the ground shook with increasing vigor. Deves moved closer to the center of the room and continued. In this building, there is something we need, something mankind needs. All right? To be perhaps even clearer, in this building, there is something those bastards above us desperately want and can't fucking have. Deves scanned them all, one by one. His gaze was heavier than the bombardment. There are tunnels that lead to an escape ship, a ship that can hopefully blast past these fucks and get you all safe, but more importantly, get the package safe. Comms have been cut off, but HQ knows what the interruption of regular communication means. This scenario has been planned for. In fact, it's about right on time, albeit a tad too early. Planned for? Leda threw up her arms and looked toward the shaking ceiling. You'll have to pardon me for not believing that. Deve's upper lip reared up just slightly. This may be hard for you all to believe, but we're outgunned. And I'm not just talking about this outpost. I'm talking about humanity. I'm not one to lecture, but it appears I might need to. In uneven power dynamics, measured subtlety is one of the strongest weapons. And as far as I'm concerned, if we get this package off this moon, then that measure is bang fucking on. Casualties are part of the game. Game! Leda was becoming untethered, and Amen could see the 1,000-yard stare in her eyes. This isn't a game, damn it! This is my life! This is our lives! We've studied the aliens. Moreover, we've studied what they think of us. Deves ignored her, as unbothered as ever. His voice and demeanor radiated unflinching confidence. They've got humanity pinned pretty damn well. Scrappy, determined, ingeniously crafty, their words, and stubborn. That's damn on the money. But the brass noticed that they were missing something rather crucial. They noticed a feature of humanity that the aliens failed to capture in any sense, and it's that exact misunderstanding that the entire war effort is built upon. That word wasn't lost on a soul. War. It had never been used until now, or, as was now apparent, not used in front of anyone not deeply involved. You know what the missing quality was? Everyone knew Deves wasn't looking for a response. His answer was atypically biting, said with such edge and malice that it physically hurt to hear. Savagery. The room was cold, and the bombardment had momentarily ceased. All that existed was suspended, scattered dust, and the presence of a man who could blot out the sun. Amen felt a surge of clarity in his chest that he'd just recently accepted he'd never feel again. Let me be crystal clear. A darkness came out in Deves that was not only unexpected, but so uncharacteristic, yet said with such measured poise that it could only be described as deeply unsettling. You die, I die, we all die, I don't fucking care. Not only can we not afford to care, we must actively despise care. I'd sooner see 1,000,000 soldiers die in violent, hellish deaths than see mankind get snuffed out by some intergalactic abominations. I'd dine with the devil every night in a fresh pit of lava if it meant just one of those fuckers never moved again. Every morning I wake up, and I smile. I smile because I know that today is another day that I might get to kill one of those bastards. It's another day that I might get to see them squirm. And because of that, it's a great day. It's my favorite day. It's a goddamn glorious day. As long as a mere atom of me exists, then those fuckers are not safe. Their friends aren't safe. Their families aren't safe. Their goddamn garbage isn't safe from the fury I intend to unleash upon their existence. I will not fucking rest until I guarantee that my great-grandkids are not only unaware that these fucks existed, but go to school every day and play hopscotch every afternoon atop what was once their most sacred lands, their most revered icons. I don't want just annihilation. I want desecration. Not a word was said. Perhaps even God himself took a moment to recoil at the statement. For nothing, not even the atoms between them all, dared move until Deves did first. He let his words settle into the weight they deserved. Then, without ceremony, he straightened up, fixed his collar, and resumed his calculated attitude of authority. Let's get to fucking work. Amen didn't even remember that he'd been afraid. The end. Like and subscribe for more content.